Clutch Trucker filmed before a live studio audience. Rusty, the world famous meatball dog. See, I pointed down here, so he looked that way. See, I don't know why he looks in the camera, though. I didn't train him to do that. Crazy. Here's a little secret. He knows the sausages are coming after we do the opening, so maybe that's why he behaves so well. Here you go, right here, Rusty. Oh yeah, love the sausages, baby. Love the sausages. Hey YouTube, Clutch Trucker here. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of the Clutch Trucker channel. Okay, I had promised this video where I'd expand more on the hours of service stuff and how ELD providers are dealing with it, which hasn't been well. I've already done some videos about that. Keep trucking. For one, you guys, please, don't even get me started. Okay, here I am parked at the TA in Lodi or Seville, Ohio, whichever one you want to call it, right at the junction of I-71 and I-76. And this is as far as I could make it tonight. I had to leave Maybrook, New York early this morning, and then I went over and unloaded. I was able to show a 34 off, went over and unloaded, finally, that damn Fresenius load in Chester, New York. Then stayed there for 7 hours. So there, I utilized the new split sleeper berth rule, where you can do only a 7-hour break, and then do 3 hours later. Well, it only took me a half hour, and I didn't even take that to drive down there. Actually, it was like 23 minutes. But it was just enough past, so I had to show the full half hour. Showed 15 minutes pre-trip, and then half hour driving down there, and then 15 minutes unloading, and then went right back into the sleeper berth. So then after 7 hours, Rashad called early this morning and said, hey, I got this load for you. Picks up down in New Jersey, down south of Philadelphia. Drove all the way down there, picked that up, and was about to do 3 more there, and then I realized all I'd get back is a half hour of driving and a total of 1 hour on duty. Big freaking hairy deal. So I just went ahead and headed on out and tried to beat the rush hour traffic through Philadelphia. It's still a freaking nightmare going through there. But anyway, made it all the way over here to Lodi, Ohio, and I'll show you that log as an example of the split sleeper berth and how I used that legally to make it work. And so I made it all the way over here to Lodi, Ohio tonight. So I wanted to kind of do an all-inclusive video of where we do talk about all the new rules and how they're all affecting us. And I'm going to show you some examples straight from the FMCSA's website, my log examples, all to prove these ELD providers who keep saying, well, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. They're wrong. And I've got freaking proof. I don't mean to sound so scary. Sorry. So I thought we'd kind of divide this into 2 parts. Since it's been a few months since I did that initial video all about the changes, the hours of service changes, that's the one titled HOS Changes 9/29/20 Explained. That was the first one I did. And that's after I just kind of initially read the rules and did my interpretation of them and let you know they're coming up in a couple of months. Hey, get ready for that. And then just a few days, or a week or so before the rules into effect, that video exploded because all of a sudden everyone's Googling that and looking it up, trying to find videos about somebody explaining the hours of service rules. And then since then I did subsequent videos. One like talking more about the 30-minute break rule, another one talking about real-world examples of using the split sleeper berth, and then I found that loophole in there where it didn't ever put a cap on how long you could make those breaks in your split sleeper berth last to stop your 14. So I thought, let's roll it all together into one nice little video. It's going to be probably a long one, but we're going to explain everything as I understand it, and as I'm sure a lot of other people have understood it. I've had a lot of people comment and say, yeah, I got it right. I've had still a lot of people arguing with me saying I have it wrong. And it may ultimately prove that I am wrong, but I believe I'm right on this. I've read everything, as I said in that first video, where I said over and over, I've read the whole thing. I have, and I've read it numerous times now. I've listened to the FMCSA question and answer webinar a few times now. So I know I'm right on this, at least the way they presented it. So tonight it either came down to make this video or go do all the comments, and I figured let's go ahead and make the video. I know I've had a ton of comments coming in. I looked at a couple of them. Somebody did post one about how in the FMCSA register, you know, a lot of the ELD companies were saying, well, we need more time. It's going to take us at least 6 months, at least 8 months, at least 9 months, at least 12 months or 18 months to get it right. Really? Come on. It's not that difficult. you can get your stuff programmed in time. And of course, they didn't allow them that amount of time. They said, no, 120 days is enough time. Well, obviously it wasn't for a lot of these guys like Keep Truckin' and others. Anyway, let's dive on in. Okay, first off, I'm just going to briefly touch on the long haul, short haul exemption, because that doesn't affect most of the OTR drivers who are tuning into these videos. Because really the only changes they had on that one were they went from 100 to 150 air mile radius, and they went from 12 hours to 14 hours. That's pretty simple, pretty easy to figure out. If you were already on that exemption before, you're still on the exemption, you just got a little bit bigger radius, and you got 2 more hours. Okay? Done with that one. Now, the adverse weather conditions or adverse driving conditions one you think would be simple, but of course, how the ELD providers are going to deal with it, that's the big question mark. Okay, because we get 2 more hours on our drive and 2 more hours on our 14 if we run into adverse conditions, but how are you going to prove that, and how are you going to show it on your ELD log? I'm on paper logs. I will simply notate, hey, I ran into adverse driving conditions, traffic backed up, a car flipped over here at mile marker such and forth on highway it's and that here in South Carolina. Therefore, I'm enacting the adverse driving conditions exemption. So that's all I would say on my log, and that would give me my extra 2 hours driving, an extra 2 hours on my 14. Now, how the ELD providers are going to handle it, like I say, my suggestion would be you put a little tab on there that the drivers can hit and say, I'm enacting the adverse driving conditions exemption because I ran into an adverse driving condition, and then leave you space to type in what it is, and bang, you're covered. So ELD providers giving you a little hint, that's the best way to handle that. Okay, that's kind of done. Let's move on. Okay, next up, the changes to the 30-minute break rule. It no longer has to be from when you start your 14-hour clock that day. It is only 8 hours of cumulative driving time. This is great, because before, say you started your day at 10 a.m., which gave you until midnight to drive. Well, that meant by 6 p.m. you had to take a 30-minute all off-duty break, no matter what. Okay, even if you only drove a few hours and you spent a lot of that time off duty or, on duty or whatever, didn't matter. You had to take that 30-minute break by 6 p.m. and it was all off duty. Okay, well, let's say you took one at like 3 p.m. Well, now you took one too early. If you were going to use up your whole 14 that day, you had to take another one by 11 p.m. so you could get that last hour in. So you ended up taking 2. That's what really sucked about the old rule. The way it's changed now is it's only 8 hours of cumulative driving time. You only have 11 hours in your driving day, drivers. Think about it this way. So as long as you take, say you drove 3 hours at some point during the day, and then you took a 30-minute break, you will never have to take another 30-minute break in that day because you only have 8 hours left, period, of total driving time. So you can drive the rest of those 8 hours and you don't have to take another 30-minute break. And here's the best part. It can be all on duty, all off duty, or a combination of all of that, or even yard move in there. The only thing that doesn't count for your 30-minute break is driving. That's it. And as I said in a previous video, for those old jackwagons who pull up to the fuel island and then sit there and eat their lunch and don't even bother pulling forward when there's space to pull forward, you got no excuse to do that anymore, you jackwagons. Because they can say, oh, I can't move the truck now. Yeah, you can. You can go into on-duty yard move and move that truck. You can be on duty, not driving, and move that truck, and it'll count for your 30-minute break. Or you can just simply be off-duty. You can do any combination of those 3, and it'll count for your 30-minute break. So you have no excuse to sit there like a jerk-off on the fuel island, blocking everybody else, and eating your lunch. You got no excuse. Like I say, the only thing that doesn't count against your 30-minute break is driving. And yes, you can use a yard move in a truck stop because you're not on a public road. Anytime you're on a privately owned part of property, which is a truck stop, or a warehouse, like a Walmart distribution center, Target distribution center, what have you, or the company you work for, their yard, you're moving trailers around. Yard move will work on all of those. You just can't use it on a public roadway. So you jackwagons who block up the fuel island for 30 minutes saying you can't move your truck, you got no excuse. You're just a jerk. Okay, now on to the big hairy one, the split sleeper berth provision. This is the one that's been causing all the trouble, and especially with all the ELD providers who haven't got it right. And they keep saying stuff, they're just making crap up. Oh, you have to do it this way first. You have to do it that way first. Oh, you don't get back those hours from the first break until you do both of them. Where are they coming up with this? It's not in the rules anywhere. As I said 2 videos ago, when I was down in Baltimore on Saturday night, or Friday night, whatever it was, I'll hit it again, okay? Here is the split sleeper berth rule. You ready? The split sleeper berth can be achieved by combining 2 breaks, one of which has to be at least 2 hours off duty or in the sleeper berth, either one. The second being at least 7 hours in the sleeper berth only, for both breaks equaling at least 10 hours. Okay, so you could do a 3 off duty, and you could do a 7 in the sleeper berth later. That would equal your 10. That satisfies your split sleeper berth rule. And then they go on to say, and neither period counts against your 14. Now here's where the ELD providers keep arguing. They keep saying, oh, well, you have to do both of them combined first before you get the hours back on the first one. No. And a lot of them were saying, oh, well, you have to do the longer one first so we know you're in a sleeper berth before you do the second one. No, that's just wrong. You guys are just wrong, and you're lazy, and you don't know how to reprogram your software, so you're coming up with excuses. And to prove this, I've got screenshots of compliant logs straight from the FMCSA website that I'm going to show you, so I can prove, for one, they show you can do the shorter break first, and 2, that both periods stop your 14-hour clock. You don't have to wait until they're both done, because the logs they show are non-violation logs. So keep trucking. And all the others who have got it kept saying, well, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. You are just making crap up to cover for the fact that your software isn't up to date and you got it wrong. So now the FMCSA's log example is a little complicated to follow and all that. I'm trying to explain it as I'm showing it to you. We'll dive into that first. Then I'm going to show you some real world examples that I've most recently used on the split sleeper berth rule. So let's check into all of that. Okay, this is straight from the FMCSA website of an example of a non-violation log using the split sleeper berth rule. It's showing the date is 10/12, October 12th. And at midnight, you come out of your break, say you did at least a 10-hour break there, and you went on duty for an hour. That's a long pre-trip, but whatever, okay? Then at 1 a.m., you go into driving for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours until 6 a.m. Then you hit the sleeper berth for 3 hours, proving you can do the shorter break first. Keep trucking, and other ELD providers who keep saying you have to do the longer one first. No. There's the shorter one. Okay, your day started at midnight, so now your 14 would have ended at 1400 or 2 p.m. Well, look, they drove past that because they took the 3-hour break, which stopped their clock from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then they drove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. That's a total of 11. They've depleted their 11 hours, and they went back into the sleeper berth at 3 p.m. because now their 14 ended originally at 2 p.m., but they added 3 hours, so that would have been 5 p.m. or 1700. Okay, so they were completely legal to do that. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours in the sleeper berth, combined with that 3, is your 10. Do they get back a full 11 and 14? No. They get back that first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours they drove, and all the time between midnight and 6 a.m., 6 hours, okay? They did 7 hours off, then they dropped down for on duty for an hour. Again, why an hour, I don't know. But anyway, then they shot up to off duty for some reason for an hour from 11 p.m. to midnight. Now, the way you calculate this is your first break ended at 9 a.m. Okay? So you add 14 hours to that would be 11 p.m., okay? And you have to add those 7 hours because remember, that stops your clock just like the 3 did earlier. So 11 p.m. now gives you until 6 a.m. the next morning, which would be on the 13th. So yeah, they would have had until 6 a.m. on the 13th based on their split sleeper berth break. Then if they wanted to take another 3-hour break, say at 6 a.m., they could do that and extend their day even farther, because now the first break would have been that 7-hour sleeper berth break, which ended at 10 p.m. on the 12th, giving them till noon the next day. 10 p.m. till noon the next day is 14 hours, plus if they did another 3 at 6 a.m., that would give them technically till 3 p.m. On that second day on the 13th, to drive until then, and they would then get back what they did in between those first 2 breaks. Confused yet? Let's dive into some of my logs and take a look at those, and I'll show you how I used the split sleeper berth for that. Okay, here is today's log. Well, actually, technically, we're into the next day, but 10/19, okay? This is Monday, the 19th. All right, I drove 670 miles today. It was a long enough drive today. All right, see, I started there after midnight. You can see right there. Oh, I'm making it blur out. My 34 came up right there at 1:45 a.m. Dropped down to on duty, pre-trip Maybrook, New York, okay? Then I went back up to drive for 30 minutes, like I explained earlier. It really only took 23, but dropped down there at 2:30 for 15 minutes of unload Chester, New York, okay? Then I went into the sleeper berth for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Ignore the block there. Then I dropped back down and I went to 1, 2, 3 hours of driving time, okay? And that got me over to my load in Thoroughfare, New Jersey, where I picked up 15 minutes show loading. I went up into sleeper berth for 45 minutes. If you're out of shipper or receiver, drivers always go into the sleeper berth. Never just go off duty. Always go sleeper berth, because what if you get stuck there for 7 hours? If you were in the sleeper berth the whole time, you're good to go. If you did off duty, it's not going to help you, okay? If you were in the sleeper berth for those 7 hours, now you've got the first of 2 of your split sleeper berth breaks. I already did 7 right there, so all I'd have to do later is a 3. But like I said before, all I'd get back is a half hour of driving and a total of 1 hour on duty. Big deal. So I went ahead and got rolling right after that, and I dropped back down to driving at 1:45, and I drove until 4 p.m. and I took a break there in Duncannon, Pennsylvania at that new Rudders they have there. Went in and got a double cheeseburger. It was a beautiful thing. All right, then went off duty, or back down to drive at 4:30. Took Rusty out there too, and then drove for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours right there till 8:30, and I fueled in Youngstown, Ohio. Did 15 minutes for fueling, shot up to the off-duty line. You can go off-duty there because you know you're not going to stay there that long. It's up to you at that point. You're in control. Then dropped back down and drove. And see, now I satisfied another 30-minute break right there too, by the way, drivers. Satisfied one there, satisfied one there, satisfied one there. Okay, now did a half hour of driving. Then I remembered, oh yeah, I love that new Mountain Dew flavor they have that's come out, and I've only found it at Speedway, so I stopped at a Speedway I knew existed in Kent, Ohio, hoping to find it. Went in, no, they didn't have it, so I got back on the road. Drove the final half hour over here to Lodi, Ohio, so I just show parked Lodi, Ohio, okay, at 10:15 p.m. Because I did that 7-hour break there, my day started at 1:45 a.m., which should have only given me till 3:45 right there p.m. to drive. But you add those 7 hours in. So that gave me until 10:45 p.m. I ended at 10:15. I'm totally in compliance, and I went back into the sleeper berth. Now, as long as I do 3, I'll get back that, but big deal. I'm going to do at least a full 10 here. They can't get mad at you for taking more than what's required. So I'm going to do a full 10. So then at 8:15 a.m. the next day, I would have a full 11 and a full 14. Okay, let's look at my log from Saturday, the 17th, okay? I started my day, I had already done my first day of Amazon stuff, and I was down in Baltimore, Maryland, all right? Started my day right there at 1 a.m., dropped down for on duty for pre-trip, pickup trailer and pre-trip Baltimore, Maryland, okay, at 1 o'clock. So then at 1:15, I drove for a big 15 minutes down to the other Amazon location just south of the airport there in Baltimore, and I said drop trailer Baltimore, Maryland. Then I went up to Sleeper Berth for 2.25 hours. Okay, that would be the first of a pair of Sleeper Berth breaks. Then I drop back down to on duty, and I pick up a trailer and pre-trip, because it's a different trailer, at Baltimore, Maryland, and I drove for 2.25 hours, and I did a break in Hamilton Township, New Jersey. Show up there to at 6:30 to 7 a.m. I cooked up some chili. Denison's chili, baby, love it. Okay, dropped back down at 7, went back on duty onto drive, and did that for 45 minutes. Dropped down to swap trailers at Avenel, New Jersey. That took 15 minutes. Okay, then I went back up to off duty because, you know, I only have to show 15 minutes for that action. Took a little bit longer than that for me to get out of that yard. So I left there at 8:15 a.m., drove for a half hour over to Staten Island, New York. Drop trailer, Staten Island. Showed 15 minutes dropping that trailer. Didn't take me 15 minutes, only took me 5, but I show 15 because that's the way I have to do it on paper logs. Go back up there at 8:45 a.m., and I'm back in the Sleeper Berth for 2.25 hours. I did 2.5 hours there in the Sleeper Berth. Which one do you count? Well, that's where the FMCSA's new laws do not make it clear. If I were to choose, I would choose the one that's going to be closer to which I know is going to be my longer break in the Sleeper Berth, so I'd get back everything in between 1 a.m. and 8:45 a.m. Okay, so if I was only going to do 7 there, I'd get more of that back. So after that, at 11 a.m., they said my next trailer was ready. I pick up trailer and pre-trip in Staten Island, New York for 15 minutes. I drove for a big half hour over to Edison, New Jersey. I dropped trailer for 15 minutes. Then I was done, and I went off duty for a half hour. Then I went back down to the driving line at 12:30 and drove until 2:30 because I was almost back up to Maybrook, New York. Now, because I did that one right there from 8:45 to 11, that stopped my 14. Remember, I started at 1 a.m., which means my 14 would have stopped at 3 p.m., okay? But because you at least can count those 2.25 hours as a split Sleeper Berth break, it doesn't have to be exactly 2, doesn't have to be exactly 3, it could be 5, doesn't matter. It stops your 14. So that gave me until, we'll see, if I started at 1 a.m., and I originally ended at 3 p.m., that gave me until 5:15 p.m., because I did 2.25 hours, where my 14 would now end. I went ahead and then I drove a little bit more. I dropped down, and I took a break in Middlebury, New York. I went to a Dollar General and resupplied the truck. Then I drove my last 15 minutes over to Maybrook, New York, and I went ahead and fueled up then and went off duty at 3:45 p.m. on Saturday. And then I was in the Sleeper Berth that whole time. I only had to do 7.75 hours because I did 2.25. But I went ahead and decided I'm going to do at least a 10, and I did more than that. I actually did a whole 34 because they can't get mad at you for taking a longer break. They can never get mad at you for resting more. You don't have to start driving again after that 7.75 hours, which would have been that plus that to equal my 10. I took a full 34. They can't get mad at you for taking a longer break. I don't think it can be much clearer. 2 breaks, one of at least 2 hours in off-duty or Sleeper Berth, one of at least 7 hours, all in Sleeper Berth, both equaling at least 10 hours. There's no caps on those, so you can run longer. You can do a 5-hour break if you need to, and then a 7-hour in the Sleeper Berth. It'll still work. And both of those periods stop your 14. They don't put a cap on that either. They just say neither period counts against your 14. Which, if you follow the rules as they're stated, as they're written, we have a hell of a lot of flexibility. And that's why those of you who haven't used the split sleeper berth provision before, when that second period never stopped the clock, it really didn't help us out a lot. Now, say you just got up and you drove for 3 hours and you slept for crap the night before, you can stop and take a nap for 5 hours. It won't count against your 14. That's where it helps us out. We can rest when we feel like we need to. What a concept. Oh! Hopefully, they'll keep it that way. All right. Well, I know this has been an incredibly long video, but I just wanted to kind of cover it all in one video. And Rusty is I had to wake him up. That's how long this video's been going on. Right, Rusty? Anyway, I hope that helps out. I hope that proves that the ELD providers are just full of crap and they keep making excuses. They had 5 months to get it right and they didn't. So if your ELD provider still hasn't got it right, remember, you have the right to go to paper logs because that's going to give a more legal and accurate representation of your day, or stay on the ELD logs, but anytime it flags you for a violation, make a notation and say, this ELD log is not following the new hours of service rules, therefore I'm not in violation. Either way, your ass is covered, okay? Because they're just being jerks about it. It's ridiculous. Right, Rusty? You see the frustration on his face. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm sorry this went so long. Please subscribe. Please comment. I get to your comments. Takes a day or two, or sometimes a few. I've got a ton I haven't gotten to yet. I will get to them. Please please ring that bell for notification. As always, sniff that magic YouTube fairy dust. Clutch and Rusty, out.